Coogs house. The Houston Cougars continue to have games on Fridays this fall, which we were told was a good thing. And now we're putting wrestling on Friday nights.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. Whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you're making your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs, we're doing the conversation, but you don't know what to say. Tell us in the comments down below as the everydayer that you are. Honestly, we're going to stick with more of the game. We did card game. Blackjack did yesterday. Today, I want to ask, when playing spades, what do you do with the twos? If you don't know, you don't know. And if you do, you do. All right, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. We've got more on that fun later because I want to talk about this WWE and Big 12 thing because I don't think it makes sense given what we were told for Houston. I also want to talk about the March Madness tournament expanding. It sounds like that may happen. We'll get to that. I also want to talk about the, I think, predictable news on this show anyway, that Todd Whitting will return as the baseball coach. But before we get to all of that, on Thursday, it came out that the Big 12 was looking to push for a bigger connection with the WWE, which is, a partnership that's been fairly lucrative for the conference. I don't want to diminish that part. They've, since Brett Yormark got here in the last couple of years, they have connected and built a brand where they're handing out like MVP style belts, like you won a wrestling event, right? It's got a cool, it adds a cool layer of cool to the conference. I guess it makes it unique. Right, you see Emmanuel Sharp when he wins most outstanding player of the Big 12 basketball tournament, holding up a big championship belt style thing for winning that MVP trophy. That's his equivalent of an MVP trophy, right? That's a cool, for an individual award like that, memento, right? It's a cool visual. And as that continues to expand, the Big 12, it sounds like, is going to play more games on Fridays. We've heard that for a long time. We've heard Brett Yormark say to this point that that's a good thing for the conference. We said it's a good thing for the conference because it's an open TV window. It's more eyeballs. He also says it's a good thing for the conference because so much of the Big 12, of Big 12 land, I should say, is in spots where it's really hot during the day and so those early Saturdays. And so Saturday night is, obviously like optimal. But if you can't get a TV window Saturday night, it might actually be better for your players to play on Friday night than Saturday at noon. I think that makes sense if you think about Houston, right? The big problem we've had thus far is talking about like Texas culture as a state and Friday night lights and how, weekday games with the city of Houston and the traffic and all those things put together and bringing recruits to campus for those games. Obviously, adding Friday night games in the big picture could hurt all of that. Houston's non-Saturday game, we had a couple of games. The TV time came out. The Stephen F. Austin game is going to be played on Thursday of the season, opening Thursday before Labor Day. That's at 7:00 p.m. Colorado is going to be a first Big 12 game of the season at home on Friday at 6:30 p.m., which I don't love. It's going to be hard to get there on time from a 5 o'clock exodus of work, right? Like that just doesn't make a lot of sense. But and then the Oregon State game is in Oregon at 9:30 Texas time. The Oregon State games in Oregon at 9:30 Texas time on a Friday night, which is again not ideal, but anyway, that's the way that goes, right? And so as we look at this, Houston actually has, for what it's worth, 4 non-Saturday games, but we have the TV time for 3 of them. We also have that the WWE is looking to add a SmackDown opener, think of like a concert opener kind of thing, to some bigger weekends in college football. They have 2 dates picked out and are looking to add more. So on the week 0 matchup between Kansas State and Iowa State is actually happening in Dublin. They're going to be doing a WWE SmackDown the Friday before that over in Ireland. Similarly, for North Carolina heading to UCF later in September, that's a Saturday night game. It looks like they're going to have a Friday night, like, not pep rally, but again, like an opening kind of event for the weekend with WWE. The specifics haven't been put out there. This is a fairly new and innovative idea for Yormarks, and it's opening up the weekend for those who like drive to town for a big game. And it's kind of like it makes it a multi-day event, right, for people coming in from out of town or people that are in town. And doing like the tailgating, let's have fun all weekend kind of thing. And I think that that's great. I also think that it's worth pointing out that the week 0 matchup, Houston plays in week 1 on the Thursday night. So obviously the week 0 Friday night does not impact them. And then the week for Orlando UCF, that's actually that early bye week of Houston's. So Houston will not, it's not like they're playing the WWE match on TV in opposition to a Houston game. However, we were just told when Houston got these Friday night games by the Big 12 and people in charge that it was actually optimal for the aforementioned reasons to play on a Friday night. It was optimal because it was, cooler or in temperature cooler, or it was open on TV and whatever. And now, given the air quotes bigger games on the Big 12 schedule, they're deciding to put wrestling on the Friday night beforehand. Look, I don't know what kind of concerts you go to or what kind of comedy shows you end up at. Game Time, let's get tickets for those. I typically listen to music as the opener for a concert, or a comedian as the opener for a bigger comedian, right? It's kind of odd to me to have wrestling. And I say that to mostly say that if it were really a great TV time, wouldn't the opener be a better football game or a good football game? Maybe not better than the Saturday one, but like, hey, let's do this, right? Now, I know you can't do that with markets. You can't like make these all neutral sites. You could have done it in Ireland, but that's not here nor there. If it's really about the TV time window, right, you're making people theoretically choose between events here. And I just feel like this is a little bit of a wool being pulled over our eyes kind of moment for what is really happening. I don't like playing the games on the Fridays. I've been fairly adamant about that. I think it actually hurts Houston. Commenters are kind of torn on it, and so I understand there's other opinions out there. I do think, though, that when I say this doesn't feel like college football, especially to someone who observes Texas culture in the way that that's a Friday night high school kind of thing, putting a made-for-TV WWE event, even if it's meant to like add some rah-rah to the local weekend, I feel like that adds to my point that it's a big show without a whole lot of substance on the impact of the season, stuff like that. It feels counterintuitive to me to say these Fridays are important for a lot of TV reasons, and then to tell a weekend market for a big Big 12 game, hey, instead of watching the game on TV, you should all go watch this wrestling thing. Or instead of watching football on TV, you should all go watch this wrestling thing on TV. It just feels counterintuitive, and I don't know that I think it makes me less into the idea than I already wasn't really that into of playing college football games on Friday nights. I just think there's a reason that Saturdays are what they are. For what it's worth, this is not the only TV dollars thing that Brett Yormark announced. He also said that at this time, they've kind of decided to pass on the private equity offers they're looking into. It's not going to happen in the immediate future, it doesn't look like. It does not sound like they're going to sell the conference's name. Remember, they're talking like the All-State 12, the Dr. Pepper 12. It does not sound like the Big 12 is taking the big part away anytime soon. An opportunity for a sponsor was there. I kind of liked both of those ideas. Private equity less so, because that felt like a last resort to me. But either way, it does sound like that those are not going to be things that happen, and maybe this WWE agreement is part of the financial reason they don't have to do that anymore. We shall see. But as more happens, we'll be following here each and every day at Locked on Coogs. Speaking of happening each and every day, it sounds like March Madness is getting crazier, and it could happen very, very soon. But first, before we get to all that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. The Eastern Conference Finals are going at least one more game after a wild, predictable New York Knicks win on Thursday night. And as those playoffs are in full swing, the best place to get on the action is at FanDuel. Lots of buzzer beaters, chaos. This has been a fantastic playoff year for all of those kinds of things. If you're enjoying getting on the action, you think you got a beat on what's going to happen at the end of the game, whether it's before or during, get in over at FanDuel with before tip-off and live player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, and more. If you can put down that first bet and it hits, that first $5 bet hits, you get $200 back in bonus bets. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up at FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if that thing hits, that's $200 back in bonus bets in your pocket. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Parker Rangers Locked on Coogs here, and March Madness is getting crazier. We've mentioned a couple times this week that there's these spring meetings where media is there and able to ask questions after people get out of the meetings. Various coaches and Brett Yormark as the commissioner and so on with the Big 12. Charlie Baker was also there representing the NCAA, and he spoke at Big 12 spring meetings specifically looking at the Big 12's impact on basketball, and it sounds like according to Charlie Baker, that we're really about to see a bigger field of the NCAA tournament. I'm going to quote him here. He says, "We've had good conversations with CBS and WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery. Our goal here is to try to get a deal to either yes or no sometime in the next few months, because there's a lot of logistical work that would need to be associated with doing this. If we're to go down this road, you just think about the opening weekends, who has to travel the longest. It gets complicated. They're doing this next couple of months to literally expand the tournament by the spring of 2026. So we're literally talking about the next NCAA tournament is likely going to have, not probably, not potentially, is likely going to have even more teams in it. I think the most obvious things they've been looking at are to go to just 72 or just 76 teams from the present 68 teams. I do think that's the first real step, is like that 72 mark, by adding a couple more play-in games. 72 from 68 would just add 2 more play-in games. Theoretically, you'd make that the other 2 16 seed matchups, where you presently kind of have 6 16 seeds. You move it to 8 16 seeds. Or I guess you currently have, anyway, and they get to play each other in 4 different matchups there instead of 2 different matchups before the 16s play the one, and give a chance. I think, frankly, you could argue to make a memory, to make a 16 seed, give them a win before most of those 16s versus 1s are blowouts, right? I can't say it always happens anymore, but most of those are blowouts, right? And look, in 2011, they went from a 65-team tournament to a 68-team tournament, and like sparked this idea of the first 4. And the first 4 was the 4 lowest seeds, meaning 2 16s and 2 16s playing each other, and the 4 lowest at-large teams playing each other. That's why those are usually 11s and 12s, right? Playing one another for an opportunity to kind of functionally get into the tournament. They try to get away from the phrase play-in game officially, but I think colloquially we all use it, obviously. And adding those kinds of games to get to 72 or 76 would be fairly simple, right? You could add, again, 2 more 16 games. You could make it as simple as like the lowest 8 at-large teams, whatever, and build the tournament out that way. Continue to add those bottom teams to have a little bit of a chaotic game in there and all of that. And I'm not saying we've never seen a play-in team go from that 12 seed all the way down. There are a couple of examples that we don't need to get into right here. They don't pertain to Houston a whole heck of a lot. But it is certainly possible. We've also seen, again, 16s. I guess you can no longer say never beat the 1 seed. That has happened in the last few. That's just how many years ago? God, is that 5-6 years ago now? So I guess that can happen, right? Chaos can ensue. So I don't want to say it can't ever happen, but I do think giving a 16 seed a chance to get a good, fun, entertaining game for that school and program is important. I do think that when we get to some of those, should North Carolina or West Virginia make it, hey, let them play, right? That's kind of what the play-in game, these games would function as. Sure, why not? What I don't like for Houston, here's the thing. I don't like this expansion of the tournament for Houston presently, but I think like agnostically, like outside of my fandom, I probably would, because it just adds more chaos. The chaos that comes from this is you can get a team get hot, or you can have a 12 seed. 12 seed beat 5s all the time, right? You can have a 12 seed have a guy like sprain his ankle or something, right? I think that there's ways that this can add to the chaos. You're adding more variables to what is already the most chaotic event in sports, right? And that agnostically, without rooting interest in that is more fun, right? It's just more fun. With FanDuel, you get more games get in on. Like there's just layers to that are unequivocally more fun. If you're Houston, and this is where I get torn here, I already don't feel like the tournament is the best way to determine the best team of the year. It's a fun way to do it. It's certainly a way to do it, but it's random. It's a bunch of single game samples. It's a bunch of chaos, and you're just kind of hoping that everyone shoots their normal percentages that week, or that the other team doesn't get crazy hot, or that you don't get that one angry ref and get in foul trouble because they're calling it super tight, or whatever the case. Jamal didn't roll his ankle and had no time to recover. Like those things are what you're hoping for. You're hoping for health and even keel play, and hit your averages, and things go your way. We get to catch a couple races here and there, right? Because it's just 6 single game samples presently. Or I guess technically it could be 7 if you're in one of these games, right? If they played a bunch of like 3, best out of 3 series for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 weekends in a row, I do honestly think Houston would have a better chance at a national championship. I think that because that defense over the course of a best of 3 series would figure out the offense, and you might see shutouts for 10 and 15 minutes regularly, right? That's just the way that team plays, the way that this program, Kelvin Sampson, plays defense, right? And so I actually think adding more variables and making it even more one-off and even more crazy continues to hurt Houston's chances, because Houston benefits from less chaos. When you're at the top of the mountain, you don't need a bunch of people shaking it, right? And so I actually, that's where I get torn here, as I feel like I do like adding March Madness chaos. And I remember being the team happy to just get in and have that chaos, and like, hey, that chaos can work our way. But when you're a 1 seed, as Houston's been 3 consecutive years, as you're a team that is pretty consistently banking in the Sweet 16, as Houston's done for the last, since 2019, right? The issue here is adding more chaos ultimately only stands to hurt you, because the chaos is you losing, right? And so I get torn on this, and I as Locked On Coogs should probably just keep my Houston hat on that I've got here. Shouts to Section 12X, or 12X section. Go check it out. Great site. Cool. I think they have a Father's Day sale going on. That's my, unsponsored. I got to plug. I'm not supposed to plug, but anyway, that's that there. I do think that it's going to be fun, and frankly, I also can see you typing right now in the comment section. Yes, Houston should beat a 16 seed, even if they're coming off of a great win and feel hot after winning a 16 versus 16 game. Yes, if they match up in the Sweet 16 or something like that, Houston should beat that 12 seed or that 11 seed that like had an extra game under the belt to spark a run or whatever. Like, yes, Houston, if they're better, should beat those teams. But it's all 1 game samples. We've seen every college team crap the bed for 1 game a season. have one bad shooting night, have one ankle sprain, have one bad ref night, have one whatever, one brain fart at the free throw line, because it's the way basketball goes. It's also college basketball. It's college kids doing this, right? And so I go back and forth on this. One thing I don't go back and forth on, one thing that has a lot less ambiguity to it, is that Todd Whitting will return as Houston's baseball coach. More on that in 1 second. But first, Locked on Coogs, Parker Ainsworth here talking about the Houston Cougar baseball program here in the third segment. And Todd Whitting coming back as a baseball coach. That was met with, we'll say, mixed responses online. A lot of social media following did not like that move. And Todd Whitting is a guy that he played at Houston in the early 90s. I actually, until I was like making sure I got my dates right on this, I always heard he went from junior college to Houston. I didn't really realize it was like in the middle. Like he went, anyway, graduated from the University of Houston in the early 90s, immediately starts coaching as an assistant coach from 96 to 2003. He ends up coming back as a head coach in 2011. He's been the head coach since 2011. And in his time at Houston, he is 474 and 363 and 1. That's a winning percentage of .566, which is, again, more than half his games. He did win the American Athletic Conference 3 times. He was the coach of the year in the American Athletic Conference in 2018. 2018 was their fourth tournament, or fourth time to make the regional in 5 years. It was their third first place finish in the American Athletic Conference in that same 5-year window. 2018 felt like an apex, and you kind of hope to keep riding the wave up. But since then, since 2018, Houston went 32-24 in 2019, which is good, not great. 2020, 6-9 before COVID shut the season down. 2021, 19-34. 2022, 37-24. 2023, 36-23. I should note that both of those seasons were their final two in the American. And in terms of opponent win-loss, they had pretty easy schedules because they jumped to the Big 12 in 2024, went 26-28. And then in 2025, they go 30-25 officially. In Big 12 conference games, Houston is 19-38 with that's good for a 33% win percentage. And if you're looking at that window since the 2018 regional, Houston is 186-176, which is just barely over the 500 mark. Certainly pulling down the just over half decade before that of success. And I think a lot of people look at that and say that's not going to cut it, right? We're building an athletic program with higher standards than that. Look at volleyball, look at basketball. Frankly, look at the hire they made in football. Look at track. Look at what didn't cut it in women's basketball and women's and softball, right? I think that people see this as like, okay, why is this program getting to do that, right? And I think it's a couple things. One, I want to stress that the announcement on Thursday was not that they've extended or rehired Todd Whitting, but that they're not going to be getting rid of him. His contract runs out in the summer of 2026. Conceivably, that means that we're looking at a situation where we're a year removed from what they just did to Ron Huey in women's basketball or Coach Vesely in softball, right? And I think that that's important phrasing because, frankly, if they had any indication that they were happy with what's happening in baseball, there's every reason to extend him right now, right? You, generally speaking, don't go into a final year of a contract with an extension if you're in a situation where the school and program like you, right? Frankly, when you keep from signing that extension and going to that final year, that's when you feel like you've got all the power, right? Instead, he just said, no, we're not. Houston said, the University of Houston said, we're not extending that guy, right? And that phrasing is important. They're going to that final year of the contract. They're going to let him play it out. I think a lot of people were still like, but they could have just fired him, gotten out from under it. How much money could that really be worth? And and without going into and asking for open records and all those kinds of things about what the buyout would be and reading line by line on those, I will say that I do think being the a third firing of a head coach in the same calendar year just a year removed from having fired the head football coach, would ultimately, be a really big shakeup for the whole athletic department. And finding all of those coaches take resources, right? They just did a big search and got got Coach Mitchell for the girls basketball. They're currently doing a big search for softball, to then tangentially also be doing one for baseball. Would be adding a lot of pulls at the figurative net here, right? The other thing I think is important in that is that unlike women's basketball, unlike softball, in their first 2 years in the Big 12, the baseball program got incrementally, it wasn't by a lot, but did get better. They went 26 and 28 in 2024. They went 30 and 25 in 2025. They went from not making the conference tournament when they finished 12th out of 12 baseball programs in 2024 to finishing 11th out of 14th baseball programs and making the Big 12 tournament. They had a pitcher that won Pitcher of the Year in the conference. Xavier Perez had a tremendous year hitting. There were steps that you could say were maybe not big steps in terms of how much ground they cover, but were steps in the right direction if you're trying to grade his performance relative to coaches that are, not coming back, right? The other thing I think about Whitting in looking at this is that there probably is some soft spot for the guy who's an alum and basically spent his whole adult life in Third Ward with Houston baseball, right? And there were highs in the earlier parts of his career. It feels like a burnt out employee trying to re-spark in a lot of ways, right? And I think that that's all very valid. I also think that not extending him for after next season and publicly saying that he will be returning to finish the contract tells him it is, crap or get off the pot time. Right? We got to move here. Are you going to win some games or not? And initially, the reporting was that there were going to be some changes to the staff. That part looks like it's been redacted from the tweet or whatever. I couldn't find that part for the second time through to get ready for the show. But I do think that you'll see other shakeups besides the head coach to try and make sure they maximize what they can for next season. And then, frankly, if you're still looking at a team that is outside of the top 7 or 8 of the Big 12, I'd probably let him go. Just let him walk at the end of his contract. And that may not be fast enough for some people, but I think that that's the real, for a program that did take a small step forward this year, that's the most realistic option. And there's a lot of things to be excited about by Houston Athletics on campus, frankly. When you have a pitcher of the year and a guy that hits the triple crown, that kind of stuff, it's worth pointing out that it's maybe worth just going to see those guys in general, no matter who is the manager of the dugout, right? And so as moves get made, as more happens, we'll be following all of them here at Locked on Coogs each and every day. So subscribe, hit the bell so you know that we are live. We'll be back on Monday unless some utter chaos breaks out between now and then. Talk about the latest in all things Houston Cougars. Feeling great. Second listen of the day as an every day of college sports at the Locked On Podcast Network that you are. Recommend Locked On College Basketball. Locked On Cougars, primarily Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Go Coogs.